Alright, folks, how you doing? So, of all the scenes in Braveheart, this one is definitely one of the most egregious. Raises a lot of question marks about how much research exactly Randall Wallace and Mel Gibson did before they made this movie. The first thing to point out is why are all these guys wearing armor indoors, except for this guy in the background? And why is Longshanks wearing the same armor as the Scots? It seems kind of weird. All of his officers are wearing different armor, and he's wearing the Scottish armor with English, heraldry painted onto it. Did they run out of money or something with the costume department? I mean, seems a bit odd. But why would you be wearing armor indoors like this? Unless they were afraid that Longshanks was going to set about them or something. But if you've ever worn real armor, which I have, like chainmail, it's heavy. If you wear it for more than a couple of hours, it wears you down. You want to take it off. Real life knights. The reason why they had squires is they would put armor on when they got to the battlefield. It's one of the biggest flaws in Hollywood movies and shows and all this. They didn't wear armor all the time. That's why they had like a small squadron, the wealthier ones, to tend to them, to help them put their armor on and things like that. They didn't ride to the battlefield actually wearing it. They put it on when they got there because they would tire themselves out if they wore it all the time. That shit's heavy, man. Anyway,
Our own island.
maybe put the volume up here. But yeah, so unfortunately, you don't get the full thing here. Longshanks is ranting about how will the French believe the strength of England if they can't even rule the whole of Britain. Our own island. Okay, I'm pretty sure the Anglo-Saxons were invaders, not native to Britain, but fine, we'll let that go.
Where is my son?
You really want to know the answer to that question? Remember the other scene where he threw the guy out the window? I say this tongue in cheek, of course, but back in those days, homosexuality was not looked upon with the same tolerance as it is in the year 2021. Just wondering who this guy is in the background here. Why are half the guys in the room wearing armor and half of them are not? That seems a bit weird. I mean, consistency, is it so much to ask for? But just a point here. The Hundred Years' War between England and France started about 40 years after the setting of this movie, as in like 1297. So the whole idea that an English king would allow a French princess in on a high-level military council meeting is absolutely absurd. The English were already basically at war with the French at this point, not to the point of like the Hundred Years' War, but it wasn't far off from this time period. There was hostilities at least. There was a lot of sort of back and forth going on between the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of France. And this character, Isabella, she was a youngster at this point, but she's based upon Queen Margaret of France, who was the sister of King Philip the Fair. So in real life, Longshanks' wife, even I should say, Longshanks' wife was the 18-year-old sister of the King of France, and Longshanks would have been about 50 or 59 years old. I'll talk about that more in future videos, but Isabella here is a stand-in for Queen Margaret of France. Looks about the same age too, about 18 or so. I don't know how old Sophie Marceau was when she made this movie.
Pardon, my lord. He asked me to come in his stead.
This is pretty ridiculous, First of all, women generally wouldn't be allowed in on these meetings. I know people are going to call me a misogynist for saying that. No, that's just how it was. You were living in a patriarchal society at the time. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just pointing it out, No women would ever be allowed in a meeting like this. I don't think, anyway, unless I've misunderstood medieval society, but it just wouldn't happen. And the prince wouldn't send anyone else. That wouldn't be allowed. I think the actor who even played Prince Edward in this movie came out and said, I don't know how the hell my character made it through the movie and didn't end up getting killed. Because he was obviously so ineffective and so wrong for the role. But yeah, the fact that she's a woman would cancel this out, let alone a French woman, let alone a French princess who has connections to the French court. I mean, even the fictional character here, Isabella, has connections to the Kingdom of France. You wouldn't allow, a member of a rival royal house into a high-level council meeting. This is just absolutely absurd.
I sent for him, and he sends you.
Shall I leave, my lord?
Yes, get the fuck out. Well, that would be the proper response. Well, not proper, you know what I'm saying. That would be, the appropriate response, giving the year and all the background information I've given you, the tensions between England and France at the time. Yeah, no, she wouldn't be allowed to stay in this meeting. No fucking way. She yeah, leave. Go back and tell my son if he's not here in 2 minutes, I'm going to throw him out the fucking window.
If he wants his queen to rule when I am gone, then by all means stay. Learn how. Please.
Now, this is all kinds of screwed up, considering what he's just about to say. We'll get to that in a minute. But there is a difference between a queen consort and a queen. I would imagine at this time that even in the fictional setting, Isabella would be queen consort, meaning she wouldn't actually have any real power, especially over England, which is rivals politically and militarily to France. It's a political alliance, So no, she would not have anywhere near the authority that Prince Edward, later King Edward II, actually had. I don't think, unless I've misunderstood it or misread the situation, but I would say that, the knights and nobles and all that, the earls, the barons, the lords of England wouldn't be taking orders from a French princess, even if she did have any real power. So this is a very modern misreading of how medieval monarchy works.
Nobles. Nobles are the key to the door of Scotland.
That's stating the obvious. Nobles are the key to any medieval kingdom anywhere.
Grant our nobles lands in the north, give their nobles estates here in England, and make them too greedy to oppose us.
That's standard practice. That wouldn't even need to be pointed out. That's what happened all the time.
But, sir, our nobles will be reluctant to uproot. New lands mean new taxes, and they're already taxed for the war in France.
Are they?
Again, you would need to tell them this. And is it really new taxes? Because they're all serving the same king. Edward I had himself crowned King of Scots after, the massacre at Berwick and the Battle of Dunbar. He marched north to Scone and had himself crowned King of Scots. So, that's just what happened. I'm not exactly happy about that, but that's what happened. What do you think the Ragman Rolls were all about? But, would they be paying new taxes considering you're serving the same king? Not so sure about that.
Are they?
This should not be a mystery. Now, he's told the princess here, Isabella in Braveheart, but in real life, this is a stand-in for Queen Margaret of France. He's told her to stay and learn how to rule a country, and listen to what he comes out with. I like the acting from Sophie Marceau, just it's all in the eyes and the body language, the fear, the trepidation, the sheer disgust and discomfort, trying to smile awkwardly.
The trouble with Scotland is that it's full of Scots.
It's kind of a... Yeah, if you go into it, the Kingdom of Scotland was full of Saxons, Normans, Norse, Gaels, Picts, Britons, Dalriada, the bloodline Scots. The ethnic composition of Scotland and England is not that simple, where it's just English versus Scots. Northern English are separate from Southern English. Northern Scots are different from Lowlanders, etc., etc. But it's Hollywood, so we'll just kind of let that slide. And that's a kind of stupid joke that no one would really laugh at.
Perhaps the time has come to reinstitute an old custom.
And he's saying this while he's perving over his daughter-in-law, incidentally. And the real Longshanks committed so many atrocities and crimes against various people. He didn't even need to make anything up. He could have just told the truth. But this is totally made up.
Grant them prima nocte.
What's that? Well, that look as well like confusion. Well, no, I'm pretty sure the princess would have spoken Latin at this time and would have understood exactly what he just said. But it is a nice subtle thing. Like, what's that? You know, of course, people back then were multilingual, especially if you were in the monarchy or the nobility, the aristocracy. She would have known exactly what he just said.
First night, when any common girl inhabiting their lands is married, our nobles shall have sexual rights to her on the night of her wedding.
Good acting from Sophie Marceau here as well. The heavy breathing coming in, like that's good. You know, fight or flight, or should be really fight, freeze or flight, more accurately. But you can see her sort of panicking as it sets in that, you know, her father-in-law has just basically implied that he wants to rape her. And she looks like she's about to cry here. Honestly, that would probably be the same.
If we can't get them out, we'll breed them out.
That's not going to work at all. The ethnic differences, the differences between Scotland and England are mostly political, not really ethnic. The ethnic differences between the Scots and English and the peoples of the British Isles, they're not really as different as you might think. They're fairly similar.
That should fetch just the kind.
Look at that, heavy breathing. Tears are almost... She's not crying, but the tears are in her eyes. It's very good acting. She really gives a good performance.
Of lords we want to Scotland. Taxes or no taxes, eh?
No, it wouldn't. You want to send a bunch of rapists and perverts to run an occupied territory? You know, that would be a horrible idea on a number of levels. First of all, how reliable would they be? If you're sending pervs and rapists and scoundrel like that, scum basically, to go run a country, oh yeah, I'm sure that'll end well. Second of all, you're going to put any nobles who are loyal to Longshanks are going to be put under enormous pressure because the peasants on the land are going to revolt, like, you know, pretty much instantly at that. They're not going to allow their women to be raped like that. So you're creating a massive headache for the nobles who are loyal to you in the first place. The nobles are going to face serious insurrections if you impose that order, that law, on the population. And you're only going to encourage the Scots to rebel all the harder, sort of thing. So even if your long-term plan was to quote-unquote breed them out, there would be such a massive rebellion that the place would be unrunnable anyway. I mean, just look at the account of Henry the Minstrel, how easily Wallace was able to just absolutely take over the country in about a year, less than a year. You know, and that would only make it 10 times worse. But aside from all that, aside from the domestic problems that you'd be causing, word would get to the European powers like France and like other states at the time, you know, within Europe, and England would be totally castigated. You know, the rest of Europe would kick them out. They would ostracize them. They would refuse to do business with them. England, our international trade alone would be crippled. No one would want anything to do with them. They'd be kicked out of the church. I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury in real life threatened to excommunicate England just because he wasn't allowed to hear Wallace's confession, who was a sworn enemy of England, upon his death. I mean, imagine what the Pope would do. Imagine what the papacy, how they would react when word of this got to them. England would be exiled. They would be excommunicated, the whole country probably, at the very least the monarchy. They'd be exiled. They would be, you know, thrown out, excommunicated completely. No one would want anything to do with England if they carried this out, and the sympathy would shift completely over to the side of the Scots, and they would gain a lot of support, not only from the papacy, but also from the other European countries as well, not just the Kingdom of France.
A most excellent idea, sire.
Is it?
Is it? No, it's actually a very horrendous idea for all the reasons I've just mentioned. Apart from the fact that obviously you're basically sanctioning mass rape. You know, it's an absolutely horrific idea on every single level. So no, not a good idea. And this is sheer Hollywood fantasy, complete bullshit. I don't think Longshanks would ever attempt anything like this. It's frankly, it just wasn't that stupid. Was he that insane? I suppose that's debatable. He certainly was pretty crazy. Definitely a narcissist for sure. Psychopath, I would suggest, very probable. But, you know, no. No one would be this idiotic. What, you know, that's not to say that Longshanks wasn't capable of atrocities. He certainly was, but this level of atrocity, this ridiculous, sheer Hollywood nonsense. Anyway, thanks for watching.